Welcome to all. In today's session, we are going to discuss about motivating adults' basic aspects and issues. In this discussion, we have the expert, Dr. M.V. Lakshmi Reddy, who is the Program Coordinator of Master of Arts in Adult Education, and myself, Dr. Elizabeth Kuruvilla. All of us know that motivation is very much needed for any educational process. And when it comes to adult learning, we know that how to motivate the adults is different from how to motivate the children. Dr. Lakshmi Reddy, could you please explain the relevance of the psychology to adult learning?
I think you have rightly put this question. It is a most relevant question, and also it is necessary to explain how psychology is related to adult learning. Before that, let me say a word about psychology. Psychology can be defined as the scientific study of human behavior and experience. Here, human behavior is scientifically studied, and also the experience is scientifically studied by using psychology. That is the reason why without psychology, understanding human being is very difficult. Even if we understand, we may not be perfect in our understanding if you don't have the knowledge of psychology. That is how psychology is relevant as far as studying of human behavior and also experience is concerned. Now coming to educational psychology, it is in fact applied psychology, we can say. The educational psychology is the study of how humans learn in educational setting. There must be educational setting. In that setting they will be learning, but this educational psychology helps in understanding how human beings learn in the given educational settings, whether it is a child or the adult. They are expected to learn given there is educational setting. Then the effectiveness of interventions are there to be studied through psychology, and this psychology helps in studying or understanding the effectiveness of teaching and also effectiveness of learning. That is how the educational psychology helps in understanding both student and also the teacher himself, how the teacher should be dealing with the children. That is the reason why this educational psychology has a great relevance. And coming to psychology of social psychology of schools. These schools are educational institutions or the organizations, and how the educational organizations are perceived is also a matter of psychology. That is how psychology has a relevance not only in understanding the students, understanding himself as a teacher, and also the perceptions of different people about the very institutional setting, whether it is a school for children or it is a adult education center for adults, and how adult education instructor or adult educator has to deliver his part of duty to the adult learners. So this educational psychology is nothing but it is a science of education. That is, it helps in studying education in a scientific manner. It helps the teacher to understand the development of his students, how the students develop over the period of time, right from childhood to other stages, how they develop, then what is the range of their capacities or the limitations of their capacities, and the process by which they learn by and their social relationships. Because the for example, whether it is a school or adult education center, there are individuals, and these individuals have their social relationships. How these social relationships help in help the particular individuals to learn. If it is school, the children, how it helps, and if it is adult education center, how these relationships help in understanding each other and also in enabling themselves to learn. Coming to other aspects of psychology, for example, adult psychology, there is a child psychology. Both help in understanding the human being. Adult psychology helps in understanding adults, but if it is adult education, then adult educational psychology assumes greater relevance. That is how this psychology has a relevance to adult education. And prior to this, the adult has already undergone the school system, and there the adult psychology and the child educational psychology will be useful in delivering the things by the concerned instructors or the teachers. For example, there will be certain children with special needs. Whatever the psychology that is commonly studied will not help. As far as understanding of the children with special needs is concerned, there is a need to focus on certain other aspects of the individual. So that is the reason why the special educators have to understand their students in a more specific manner, because what is the kind of disability they suffer from has to be understood thoroughly. Similarly, adults also may be having certain peculiar problems like the special child. Similarly, adult also has to be studied from those perspectives as well, and psychology helps in understanding adults, whether they are normal adults or abnormal adults, like when children with special needs. It all helps in understanding the students and how they learn in the process. So this is the relevance of psychology as far as students and teachers are concerned, because understanding them is very important, so that appropriate teaching methods etc. can be applied.
So sir has detailed about what is the relevance of psychology when we deal with children or when it deals with adults. When we come to the topic that is motivating adults, could you please bring out how psychology help in motivating the adults to learn? Because normally we know that for children, what to do, what strategies to adopt. But as far as adults are concerned, they are completely different from children. So could you please explain about that, sir?
Yes, because for doing anything, motivation is required on the part of any individual. So here we need to understand what motivation is. Motivation is the process that initiates, guides, maintains goal-directed behaviors. Every individual has some goals set for achievement in their life. So what are those goals? So if they have set goals, whether they are moving in that direction or not. If they are not moving in that direction, then some kind of motivation is to be infused in them, so that they start acting towards that direction, and they are properly guided, or they themselves guide thereafter towards that direction, and maintain that pace with which they should be moving towards the goal. So if a person is motivated, then it is easy to achieve the set goals. Otherwise, it is very futile to set any goals also, because when they are not to be achieved, why to even set any goals? Then there is a need for harmony between the teacher and also the students. Unless there is harmony in the goal set for themselves, for example, student has his own goal and teacher has his own goal. Student has to learn, teacher has to teach, how effectively teacher can teach or has to teach, and how effectively learner is expected to learn. These are the important things, and that goal harmony is very much required. In the absence of that thing, this teaching and learning will be moving in different directions, and achievement of the goals in educational situation is not possible at all. Then of course the goals set by the children and the goals set by the adults will be different, and how they learn also is different. For example, child learning is there. Child learning has its own domains. In fact, for example, there are 5 domains as far as the child learning is concerned, because there is a physical domain, cognitive domain, language domain, social domain, and emotional domains, because these are all the domains in which the child is expected to grow. Where there is necessary, this motivation has to be brought in, then only the proper learning will take place. For example, small child is there, even if it 5-6 months also, then we may be trying to hold him by hands, and so that exercise can be given to the legs, hands, etc. That is how physical movements are gradually taught, rather as a form of training. Similarly, social aspects, emotional aspects are also to be brought in by making the child to learn language, and also finally these domains, 5 domains are improved as far as the learning is concerned by the children. So next is child learning is linked with the development, because as we know, development of child follows a specified pattern. So the learning also will be accordingly tuned towards that pattern. So there must be compatibility, because we can predict the development, and also learning also should be in consonance with the pattern of development. Otherwise, these experiences may be higher or lower, which children cannot adjust themselves to. And it will be in a sequential manner. Child starts with learning, and it follows certain sequence, and also it is a cumulative learning. It goes on accumulating as far as the children are concerned. Learning won't disappear, and outcomes are very clear, easily accessible, and before that they are easily identifiable. And these are learning trend or patterns are almost common as far as children are concerned, except among those with special needs, because they cannot maintain their learning on the same pace as that of normal children. Same is the case with adults who have some learning disabilities. Now, adults also learn, but their learning is totally different from that of children, because there are certain variables because of which the learning on the part of adults is diversified, and it depends upon their age. First and foremost thing is age, and age determines their learning ability and experience. It matters a lot. People with experience in doing certain things or learning certain things, they can easily learn. Similarly, needs determine. If there is a need to learn anything, then they will definitely learn. And similarly, there must be interest to learn. Even if there is a need, if the adults do not have interest to learn, then they cannot proceed any further in that thing. And moreover, even if there is a need, even if they have ability, unless and until they have ability to learn, they cannot do that also. Then if there are problems, naturally to address the problems, they try to find some solutions in the process. They will be learning, but their learning will be totally different from how children will learn. And further, there is a self-concept in adults which is not there in the young children. As they grow, they also develop a self-concept, and this self-concept determines their learning also. If their self-concept is hurt, then they would not proceed in learning anything. Then living conditions and quality of life of adults do matter as far as their learning is concerned. Because as far as children are concerned, all conditions are actually facilitated by the parents. In the case of adults, they are expected to discharge so many duties, and they are responsible for many things. So their living conditions are totally different, and their quality of life also accordingly will be different, and that also is one of the factors that determines adult learning. Another thing is lifestyle and aspirations. So a person may be rich, and his lifestyle accordingly may be different. Sometimes even rich people will be very simple, and they may be having certain aspirations which are very high. Sometimes these aspirations may not be in harmony with their capacities and abilities, etc. In such cases, they will not be in a position to learn properly. Then these adults' rights, responsibilities, and their accountability are totally different from those of the children. So learning here also is totally different, and they need to have orientation to their living, working, and learning situations. Unless they have their own orientation towards a particular thing, learning will not take place. And these are all important things that need to be considered, and all these will act as a motivating or demotivating factors in their learning. That is the reason why there are certain principles of adult learning which are different from learning of the children or teaching of the children. For example, when children are being taught, it is a normal principle that the teaching should proceed from simple to complex, from known thing to unknown thing, from concrete thing to abstract. Like that, there are certain people, but those principles will not be helpful in the case of adult learning, because adults are quite mature. They have already learnt many things, and they have a lot of experiences, and they need to be taught differently. And there are certain principles related to adult learning. First of all, if there is a need to know, then only they will be learning. That is one of the important principles. And another thing is, they want to build upon the experience. If it is already known, then they will ignore it. If experience is something new and related to their previous experience, then they will try to build upon it. That is another principle of adult learning. Then self-concept is there, and they will be rather they should be treated well. Then only they will be in a position to learn. And once that self-concept is respected, they will be moving even themselves in a right direction, and it will be a kind of self-directed learning also, unlike the children. For children, we need to tell you learn like this. But for adults, once they know about it, then they proceed. And at the same time, there should be readiness to learn. For example, in the case of children, we force them to go to school, and they have to go to school and they have to learn. Here, you cannot force adults to learn. They must be ready to learn. So their readiness to learn also is one of the important principles to be kept in mind. And problem-centered orientation. Learners, adult learners, they will be having problems. They need to address their problems, and they will have certain orientation, and whatever learning is to be acquired, it must be problem oriented. Then only the learning will be happening in the adults. And these adult learners are mostly motivated from inside. outside motivation will work less on them, unlike children. For children, okay, by offering any enticement, like it may be few 100 rupees or some
Toys
kind of
or
toys or chocolate or something else, they may be motivated to learn something. In this case, it doesn't work well unless and until it is related to any one of these earlier principles that have been discussed. Otherwise, they will not have that kind of motivation impact from outside sources. So these are all the basic differences in motivating children and also adults, and I have focused mostly on how these things can work in motivating adults.
Okay. So, sir has elaborated on the relevance of psychology to adult learning, as well as how the motivating adults is different from motivating children. When we hear these two, so which one do you think is more difficult? Whether motivating adults is difficult or motivating children? What's your opinion, sir?
Motivating adults is certainly very difficult task, because as I told just a minute ago, these children can be influenced very easily by external factors.
Yes.
Because internally they are not motivated to learn. That here in the case of adults, these external factors, unless and until they have greater relevance to their learning, will not be acting as a motivating factor. That is the reason why intrinsic motivation is a more relevant thing for adult learning, because of which adults are capable of learning on their own with little motivation.
Yes. So we can see that our learners, they are ODL learners, and we know that how much they are motivated and how we can motivate them. So this intrinsic motivation is very much important. So already sir has stated about the what is motivation, how it derives and everything. What are the different types of motivation?
I think you are the expert in this field. You are master of psychology. Huh? Why don't you throw a light on these aspects from your side?
So when we think that already sir has stated in his description that there are two types of motivation, extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. So when we try to motivate through the outside manner, we call it as extrinsic motivation. And when it comes from inner urge, that is known as the intrinsic motivation. So in such cases, as I stated earlier, you can see that the ODL learners, they are studying from a remote place and they are distant from the teacher. So the motivation should come from the inner urge. Otherwise, they cannot complete. That's why we can see there are so many dropout rates in the matter of the ODL learners. So in this case, we can see that the intrinsic motivation is more important as far as the adults are concerned. And we know that there are different types of theories of motivation also. Different theories. When we think of this intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, it is better to put some light on the different theories of motivation. When we look at the psychology textbook, we can see that there are different theories of motivation where it is divided into content theories and process theories. But as far as the adults are concerned, we can see that there are some theories of motivation which are more relevant as far as for the learning of the adults or to motivate the adults. So let us classify the theories of motivation like that: the physiological needs theory, then the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the next one we can see that the physiological needs of theory of motivation, and the last one, McClelland's achievement theory of motivation. So we have divided these theories into the four. So let us have a glance on the theories. So here the first one what we have stated is the psychoanalytic theory. When we hear the term psychoanalytic theory, there we can see that this theory was put forward by Sigmund Freud, where we know that psychoanalysis is an important aspect, and Freud claimed that human psychology could be classified into three, that is id, ego and superego. And here the psychosis of the human mind can be divided especially into two, conscious mind and unconscious mind, which composed of the three components id, ego and superego. Let us see what does this ego represents. The ego represents the conscious mind, where it is made up of the thoughts, memories, judgments and feelings. We can see that it gives an adult their sense of identity and personality. The id indicating the unconscious mind. So there are some kind of the urges that remains in the unconscious mind, and at last we can see the component that is the superego, which represents the moderating portion of society's traditional morals and taboos. So here within these three components, which is divided into the conscious and unconscious mind, based on this there are some kind of urges depending upon the adults. And psychoanalysis theory states that feelings, behavior, urges, motives of people get influenced through the unconscious aspect of the mind. And it studies how psychological forces that are unconscious influence the behaviors of individuals. Then we can see that many of us, we are trying to work from the conscious mind, what is there, what we have received from others. So how this theory is relevant in the case of adults is that when there is a willpower only, they can act. So some kind of urge, the willpower should be in the mind of the adults. As stated earlier, the adults, they are coming from different background. They have so many responsibilities. Within the workplace responsibilities, household responsibilities, they are coming for the learning purpose. So they should have their own urge in their mind. That is, an intrinsic motivation is very much needed. Coming to the second theory that is displayed on the screen, we can see that it is Maslow's hierarchy of needs theory. And here, Abraham Maslow first introduced the hierarchy of needs in the year 1943 in his paper titled A Theory of Human Motivation, which is later transferred into a book titled Motivation and Personality. This hierarchy, we can see that it is a hierarchy of the needs. So you can show the hierarchy of needs, that which shows that there are different types of hierarchy of needs, that these needs, you can see that it is pyramidal in shape, where it consists of 5 needs. And how it is going from the lower needs to the higher needs. So people are motivated basically to fulfill the basic needs before moving to the advanced needs. So what is this theory states that our actions are motivated by certain psychological and physiological needs that progress from basic to complex. So let us see what are the different types of needs. So here the physiological needs comes first. The physiological needs include those that are vital to survival. So when we look at the pyramid itself, we can see that at the bottom, the physiological needs was written. What are the physiological needs? They are food, air, sleep, so all shelter. All these things are the physiological needs. Until and unless the physiological needs are satisfied, one cannot step up to the second level of needs, that is the that needs is the safety and security needs. So we can see that after satisfying the physiological needs, the next ladder is the safety and security needs. What does it mean that the safety and security needs? We need that financial security, health and wellness security, safety against accidents and injury. This is also important very much in everybody's life. And after satisfying these safety needs, we are going further to the social needs. That is the third ladder. So these social needs, we can see that here what is important, the love and belongingness is very much needed at this level. Otherwise, we can say that the adults also expect more kind of affiliation. So here, the social needs in Maslow's hierarchy, it include the love, acceptance, recognition, belonging, and at this level, the level for emotional relationships drives human behavior. Some of the things that satisfied this need, that this include that the friendship circle is important, then the family relationships is important, social group is important, community group is important, and churches and religious organization that gives a bonding that there are somebody to ask or to take care of them. It is an important thing. Otherwise, there will create the loneliness, depression, and anxiety. In order to avoid loneliness, depression, and anxiety, it is important for people to feel loved and accepted by others. So here, these three needs which I explain, how we can connect it with the adult learners. So first thing, we know that the adult learners, especially Indira Gandhi National Open University, offering programs that our motto itself, reaching to the unreached. So the unreached may be deprived of the basic needs. Sometimes the food they may not be getting much properly, and proper water, and their shelter also not having that type of things. So there are different heterogeneous learners we can see in the case of the adult learners. So first, the teacher has to understand the background of the learners, and in such case, the satisfaction of the physiological needs is very much important. After that, the safety and security needs. Many of the learners who comes for the learning purpose, the adult learners, they are taking loans. The financial difficulty may be there. So some kind of effort, if we take that, let them learning by doing, where Gandhiji stated that the basic education, where learning by doing, while they are learning, they can earn something. In such kind of way, some arrangement is made. It gives some kind of security in the mind of the learners. Then comes the social needs, where we can see that this social needs is very much important. And then what is happening is that the teacher, educator should give love and affection to the children, though they are coming from the different background. So we have discussed the three needs. Now we have a break for 2-3 minutes. After that, we will continue the discussion on the Maslow's theory of needs. Be online. Thank you.
In the current global economy and digital era, learn or perish is the order of the day for all adults in all sectors of life. As a result, adult education and lifelong learning have assumed great significance. Ignou, as a national university, has played its role by way of coming up with the Master of Arts in Adult Education program, MAAE.
MAAE program focuses on different aspects of theory and practice, policies and programs, as well as research, among other things related to adult education.
MAAE is a 2-year modular program with multiple entry and exit options. Students who complete first year of the program will be awarded with the postgraduate diploma in adult education. In case they want to continue, they will complete the second year program and they will be awarded with the Master of Arts in adult education.
MAAE program consists of 10 courses, 5 courses in each year, 8 theory courses, 6 credits worth, and 1 practical course of 10 credits in the first year and 1 dissertation course of 10 credits in the second year.
Practical course of MAAE is divided into 3 components, namely community-based practical activities, workshop-based practical activities, and adult education training center or institution-based practical activities. And the student has to complete all the 3 components for completion of this practical course.
The minimum qualification required for admission to this program is bachelor's degree from any recognized university. The minimum duration is 2 years and the maximum duration is 4 years.
Instructional system follows multimedia approach. The major medium of instruction is self-learning print materials, which is supplemented by other media such as audio-video programs, broadcasting, that is interactive radio counseling, teleconferencing, personal contact programs or counseling sessions at the study centers, workshops and field work, as well as internship at the institutional level.
Those who seek out a master's degree in adult education have a myriad of career and specialization options. They can go further for higher studies, that is research in various fields of adult education, an adult literacy teacher, faculty in university departments of adult and continuing education, extension and lifelong learning. Field functionaries in the projects implemented by state and central governments as well as NGOs. For more details, you can log on to
www.ignou.ac.in.
Don't forget to take admission. Hurry up. Welcome back to the session titled Motivating Adults, Basic Aspects and Issues. The expert, Dr. M.V. Lakshmi Reddy, and myself, Dr. Elizabeth Kuruvilla. In the previous session, we have wind up that discussing about the various theories of motivation. And in that, we have classified the theories as psychoanalytic theory, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, physiological theory of motivation, and then coming to the McClellan's theory of achievement motivation. And here, while discussing the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there we have discussed about the physiological needs, safety needs, and social needs. Coming to the esteem needs, which is the fourth level of the hierarchy of needs pyramid, we can see that this esteem needs, it is a need for appreciation and respect. This is an important thing, especially the adults are concerned. Once the needs at the bottom level, they are satisfied, the esteem needs begin to play a major role in motivating behavior. So at this level, we can see that it becomes increasingly important to gain the respect and appreciation of others. So what is needed that a teacher has to appreciate the adult learners, and people have a need to accomplish things, then have their efforts recognized. So here, this esteem needs that leads to a good development of the self-concept, where Dr. Lakshmi Reddy has stated that the self-concept is an important thing in the psychology of the adult learning. And then we can see that this esteem needs has severe implication as far as the adult learners are concerned. The next theory, that is the Morgan's physiological theory of motivation. What is the core content of this theory is that the central motive state. So here there is a central motive state in the brain which is base for all the human activities and behavior. So an organism can be stimulated externally either through chemical or physical agents which is transmitted to the central motive state through nerves as electrical impulses. So here this central motive state, it has four basic characteristics features such as the persistent, selectivity, general activity, and emission of certain behavior pattern. What does this persistent mean? Persistent mean that once the organism was arose, the central motive state does not require any support internally or externally, or otherwise we can state that intrinsically or extrinsically. Then comes the general activity, where a motivated organism has a heightened bodily activity. Regarding the selectivity, we can see that it results in selectivity of reaction to stimuli. And coming to the fourth feature, that is emission of certain behavior pattern, there the central motive state prompts the organism for appropriate consummatory behavior. So how this theory has not much importance as far as the adults concerned, but there are some factors which is important, that the central motive state, which urges the adults to learn on their own. And then comes the theory, another theory which is relevant regarding the adults are concerned, that is the McClellan's theory of need for achievement. So here we can see that the theory of achievement motivation, it can be divided into the three basic needs, that is need for achievement, need for affiliation, and need for power. What does this need for achievement mean? This is related to achieving excellence, because now this excellence concept is coming, and the excellence goals that are challenging, overcoming obstacles and difficulties, competition and persistence, need to master skills, and so on. So this type of skill development, it's happening. So here the need for achieving all those skills is important in the minds of the adult learners. And the next one, that is the need for affiliation, that is relating to maintaining close and intimate relationship with others. People high on need for achievement want to be liked by others. So they may make several groups, they try to influence others, get belongingness with others. So their self-esteem they will try to develop. So this is very important as far as the adult learners is concerned. And then the need for power, which is related to having an influence, impact and control over others. People that, especially the adults who are high on need for power, would like to influence others and make an impact on others. When we look all these theories, these five theories, we can see that which theory is more important to adults. All the theories are important. It depends upon the context where the adults are coming from and on what purpose they have taken their study purpose. So all these theories have their own relevance as far as the adult learners are concerned. So the topic what we are discussing is motivating adults, basic aspects and issues. Till now we didn't come to the basic aspects and issues. Dr. Lakshmi Reddy, what are the basic aspects that are important in motivating the adults? Could you please explain?
In fact, I have already highlighted certain aspects that determine the adult learning. Same aspects are equally applicable to motivating the adults as well.
Yes.
One major difference between child and adult is the domains in which the children are engaged are limited, whereas in the case of adults, entire life, it is a lifelong and life-wide experiences in different domains, and all those domains in which they are busy with, they are to be taken into account, or they play important role in their motivation. That is one important thing, the domains in which they are engaged in their life. Next is age, at what age they are and in what domain they are working. That has a relationship between the two. Certain ages will not allow some people to perform certain other things. Similarly, experience related aspects are there. If something new is being given to adults, they may feel slightly disturbed as to how to do it or how to learn it. Similarly, if certain needs have emerged, they know about basic needs, certain other needs which you have already highlighted in your different theories. But in addition to that, if certain needs emerged all of a sudden, and their needs are to be taken into account so that they can get immediately motivated. And similarly, if interest is missing, interest needs to be developed so that the adults will learn effectively. If ability is not there, how to increase their ability to do certain thing better? If that can be provided to the adults, they will feel more motivated. That is another important aspect, ability aspect. And problems, what is the nature of problems, what is the magnitude of the problem they are facing? This is an important aspect. Unless and until these problems are addressed effectively, they cannot be effective in learning. So that will serve as a motivating factor. As you have rightly pointed out in Maslow's hierarchy theory, where there is self-esteem, it is a self-concept. They have that we. If unless and until that we is respected, they will not be learning. What are all the conditions that is that are determining that self-concept have to be thoroughly taken into account. Another thing is living conditions. If the living conditions are rather amenable to the peaceful living of the individuals, then there can be better learning, because basic needs are these things.
Yes.
Unless and these basic needs are fulfilled, you cannot think of motivating the adults. And lifestyle, what is their lifestyle? Are they busy in the entire day with something else, and where you wanted to ask them to learn a particular thing which is totally different? It cannot match well with that. And another thing is achievement related aspects. So if they are achieving well, then they can easily get motivated. If they are not achieving well in anything, first they must be facilitated to achieve in what they are engaged. Then only you can bring in your element of promoting learning among them. That is a important thing. Another aspect is orientation. As I have already highlighted in the learning matters, unless and until they are oriented to proper living, proper working and proper learning, you cannot bring in motivation in them. But there are factors which will be differently influencing different adult learners.
Okay, sir. You have stated, highlighted the basic aspects that motivate the adults to learn. And earlier we have explained about the theories of motivation. Whether that theories of motivation alone is enough to motivate the adult learners, or do you think that there needs some kind of approaches? If some approaches are needed, could you highlight what are the approaches?
Yeah, in fact, all theories may not be equally relevant to all adults, because we have rightly highlighted different theories and different aspects of motivation you have rightly pointed out. But out of these things, you have to tailor them to different learners. So how you will be approaching towards these particular learners, that will matter. For example, for some adults, needs-based approach will help. If particular need is fulfilled, then only I will learn. In such cases, what else you will do? You have to follow that needs. Okay, if this is one need, what more needs you have? You must focus on addressing their needs first. That is a needs-based approach. Okay. Next is friendly approach. If you think that you are assistant professor, or I think that I am associate professor, it won't work well, and friendly approach is required, and individual contact is required in their case, and that is another approach. And one more approach is participatory approach. You have to engage them in your interaction, and you must facilitate them to effectively participate in that. Then they will be more interested. Similarly, achievement approach. If there is achievement by your meeting them, then they will be immediately motivated. So achievement approach is another thing. And realistic approach. Okay, if all these things are not working, whatever the approach, friendly approach, other approaches, then what really works? What exactly the adults expect? Because you have thorough knowledge of different theories of learning, motivation, etc. But unless and until realistic approach is followed, it will not be of any help. So that is the reason why sometimes creative approaches are required. You have to invent them, which suits well to these people.
So highlighted about the various approaches. Do you think that all these approaches equally work well with adults?
No, certainly not. I have already highlighted that no one approach will work equally well with all others. You have to mix different approaches, even if necessary, to meet particular set of adults or group of adults, so that approach may be appropriate for them. That is the reason why it is a crucial issue, motivating the adults.
Yes. So we have come to the second part of our topic. We have covered the basic aspects. Coming to the issues, so what are the crucial issues related to choosing a particular approach to motivate adults to learn?
See, first and foremost thing you have to keep in mind is the nature and character of adult or particular group of adults. Accordingly, you should notice the issue, relevant issue. Then next thing is what kind of goal that the individual has set or the particular group of adults have set, and they need to orient them towards that goal. Then is whether one theory works or two theories work, all the theories put together work. You have to choose which theory, which approach will work. that is how it needs to be addressed. Another thing is, if you can combine all the related approaches, that will work as an excellent strategy, and that will be more appropriate to people with diversity in their living, working and other aspects.
So, generally, when we deal with these adult learners, they may sometimes arise questions like that. Could you please suggest some kind of motivational strategies for adopting to learn in a better way? Could you suggest some of the motivational strategies?
You see, for example, you are here as assistant professor, I am here as an associate professor. We know pretty well that what will help us in our promotion.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We always look at what that criteria. What criteria are there?
Yes.
Academic
Criteria.
There is a scoring pattern.
Yes.
What is that called? Academic performance
appraisal.
Appraisal form fill, where index is there, and accordingly you will try to fulfill all those criteria. Similarly, for example, adults are there, and if he received some letter, or if he has some form which is to be filled, which he cannot fill, and if the person approached refuses to fill it, then he gets motivated, and sometimes it may work as a best motivating factor also. Okay, why I should always approach somebody else? Let me myself learn. That will serve as an effective motivating factor. Like that, unless and until there is a real life related factor that can really bring in change in them, they will not be motivated, and that only the thing that needs to be considered when we attempt to motivate the adults. Otherwise, they will take it very lightly because they want to maintain status quo if it is suiting them well, because at that stage only they wanted to remain. That is their self concept, in fact. So if our concept is to move ahead further to achieve particular goal and move further ahead with the setting up of new goals, that will help very effectively as far as motivation of adults is concerned.
Okay, sir has rightly stated about the motivational strategies for the adults. But as far as the learning is concerned, the urge should come from inside, which we call it as the intrinsic motivation. So such type of strategies they have to find out on their own and make learning as a lively process. So we are winding up. Thank you, sir, for your valuable discussion on the topic motivating adults, basic aspects and issues, and thank you for the patient listening of the learners. Thank you.
Are you a fresh graduate? Do you want to fulfill your educational aspiration by pursuing higher education in various interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary areas like environmental science, environment and occupational health, philosophy, sustainability science, folklore and culture studies? If yes, the School of Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies offers various programs like Master's Program, Graduate Program, Postgraduate Diploma, Certificate and Appreciation Program. The school offers 5 Master's Program. Master of Science, Environmental Science. The eligibility criteria for MSc Environmental Science is Graduate in Science, BTech, BE, Agriculture Graduate, Forestry Graduate and Veterinary Graduate. School also offers Masters in Environment and Occupational Health, Masters in Sustainability Science, Masters in Philosophy, and Masters in Folklore and Culture Studies. The eligibility criteria for these 4 master's programs is graduate in any discipline. The school also offers various socially relevant and need-based PG Diploma program like PG Diploma in Sustainability Science, PG Diploma in Environment and Occupational Health, PG Diploma in Folklore and Culture Studies, and PG Diploma in Migration and Diaspora Studies. The school also offers PG Certificate in Climate Change and Avshist Prabandhan mein Praman Patra. The school also offers 2 doctoral programs, PhD in Environmental Science and PhD in Interdisciplinary and Transdisciplinary Studies. The school offers various innovative technologies and multimedia for providing a very excellent student support system. The study material is of high quality. The learner support is provided through Gyan Darshan, Gyan Vani, IRC, Swayam Prabha and Swayam channel of Ignou. For more detail, please log in to Ignou website. For online admission in these programs, visit school site and also the Samarth online education portal of Ignou. So please join these programs.
Hello learners, welcome to this session for your program Certificate in Fashion Design. I, Dr. Divya Ojha, Academic Associate from School of Vocational Education and Training Ignou, welcomes you all. So learners, today's session is for the program Certificate in Fashion Design, that is CFDE, and today we will be discussing the topic Introduction to Pattern Making, which is one of the block of your course of Certificate in Fashion Design program of the course 2, that is BFDI 072 Basics of Pattern Making and Sewing. So let me brief about this particular Certificate in Fashion Design program, that is CFDE. So this particular certificate program in fashion design, it is a 16 credit program which comprises of 4 courses. So course 1, it is BFDI 071 Fundamentals of Fashion Design. Course 2 is BFDI 072 Basics of Pattern Making and Sewing, on which we will be discussing today. Course 3 is BFDI 073 Introduction to Fashion Industry, and course 4 is BFD 074 Communication and Entrepreneurship. So all these 4 courses you have to study in this particular 6-month program Certificate in Fashion Design. So as you are already enrolled and you have gone through the program guide and all the structures of this program, you might be aware about the program and the courses. So the total 16 credit and each course is of 4 credit. So in today's session, we will be discussing on course 2, that is Basics of Pattern Making and Sewing, which is one of the important and skill-based course of this particular CFDE program. So let us see what all blocks and units are there in this particular course, Basics of Pattern Making and Sewing. When you see your study material, you will find that this course BFDI 072 Basics of Pattern Making and Sewing, there are 2 blocks and 1 practical workbook. So out of total 4 credits that I said that this is a 4 credit course, so 2 credit is for the theory and 2 credit is for the practical, as it is a skill based and you have to do lots of hands-on in this particular course. So 2 credit is given for the practical and 2 credit is for theory. So in this particular course you will see and you have to study 2 blocks and 1 practical workbook in which there are different activities are given, assigned, which is based on the theories which you will study in the 2 blocks. So block 1 is about introduction to pattern making and block 2 is sewing techniques, and then practical workbook which is based on pattern making and sewing practices which you have studied in the theory part of this particular course. And total 12 activities are given in your practical workbook which you have to study, and there are steps by step is given of each activity that you can follow and perform the hands-on. So today we will be focusing on the block 1, which is introduction to pattern making. So this block, introduction to pattern making, you will see that you have to study 4 units. Unit 1 is about methods of pattern making. Unit 2 is about tools for pattern making. Unit 3 is body measurement, and Unit 4 is pattern information and marking. So all these 4 units you have to study in this particular block 1, introduction to pattern making. So let us start with the unit 1, that is method of pattern making. When you see your study material, the first unit of this particular course and the block 1 is methods of pattern making, which is very important for you to understand, because being a student of design, you should know as you have taken this particular program with the charm that you will construct your garment. So this particular unit will make you aware what are different methods of pattern making, how you will construct your garment. So we expect that after going through this unit, you will define and identify the importance of pattern making. You will be able to explain and differentiate between various terms used in pattern making and understand and differentiate between drafting, flat pattern making and draping. So these are different learning outcomes that you will get from this particular unit, methods of pattern making. So now, as this particular unit is named as methods of pattern making, but first let us understand what is pattern. So what is pattern? It is very important to understand, and it is one of the important aspect in the garment construction. So pattern making is a system of plotting the body measurement on a flat surface, or we can say pattern making is the technique of shaping a flat piece of fabric to the fit on the curves and the contours of the human figure. So first thing which we have in the process of making a garment is a flat piece of a flat surface of a fabric. So converting that flat piece of fabric into the design or the garment, it is said as the pattern making. And the pattern is the template which is made on paper, from which the part of garment are traced onto fabric before cutting out and assembling. Like we discussed that the pattern making is the plotting of the body measurement on the flat surface, whether it is the paper or the garment or the fabric directly. So the pattern making is the template which is made on the paper using the body measurement of each and every part. Like for the sleeve, we take the different measurement. For the upper bodies and for the lower skirt, we take the different measurement, and we prepare the template or the pattern separately for each part of the garment. So patterns are made for every part of the garment separately, and pattern making is a highly skilled technique which calls for the technical ability, design interpretation, and the practical understanding of the garment construction. Why it is said as a technical ability? Because there are different technical terms and the process which we follow for the making of a pattern. So one who is going to make a pattern for a garment or for a particular design, he or she should be very much aware about all the process which we have to follow, starting from taking the body measurement and plotting that measurement according to the design on the piece of paper. So this is what pattern means, that converting the body measurement on a flat piece of paper for making the template which will be used for cutting the fabric for the garment construction. Then there are different methods we can use for making the pattern. Basically, there are three methods we use to develop the pattern. First is the drafting method. Drafting is the very basic and the common method we use, as we all once or a while we go for a stitching purpose to a tailor's place. So what tailors do, he or she takes the measurement, body measurement, or they directly transfer that measurement on the piece of fabric, or they might use the paper. So drafting is the two-dimensional system of drawing the pattern based on body measurement, and drafting can be done directly on the fabric or can be used to prepare the basic blocks which are adopted to create various designs. So drafting is the first and the basic point or the method of for creating the pattern. Second is the flat pattern making, which is very important, and it creates the pattern. The flat pattern making creates the pattern by making necessary changes in the already created basic blocks as per the design detail. Suppose we have taken a body measurement and we transferred that measurement on a piece of paper using following the design which we have created for the garment, and that particular plotting of the body measurement according to the design on the paper, we create the basic block. Basic block means that we have created a basic template using a standard measurement or a body measurement to create the final piece of pattern. So flat pattern making, in the process, first we create the pattern or the block on the paper, and that block we have to basic block we have to use for creating the final pattern on the fabric. So we, using that particular flat pattern making method, we can develop different kinds of yokes, collar, sleeve, skirt. Design can be created using the basic sloper or the basic block. So using that basic block or the basic pattern or the template which we have developed, we can create a number of design on the pattern. Many designs can be created by simply relocating the dart or by converting the dart into various forms such as gathers, pleats, princess panel, etc. So there is a very much advantages in the using of the method flat pattern making, that we can use that one basic block to create different designs. We can create the different styles of yokes, we can create different styles of collars or the neckline, or we can have the space to convert that darts which are on the upper body's block, and that we can convert into different pleats or the gathers to create different designs. So this is how we create the flat pattern making. Then the main And the one important advantages of this particular technique, that is flat pattern making, is that the newly developed designers pattern retain the same of the original basic pattern. It means that if we have created one basic block of following the standard body measurement, and we can use that particular block to create different designs with different manipulations in that particular block without disturbing that one basic or the standard block which we have developed. Another important advantages of using the flat pattern making is grading in different sizes can be done very easily by the flat pattern technique. Suppose we have developed a basic sloper or a block of a 34 size for the female garment, and using that particular block of a 34 or a 32 size we want to increase or decrease the size, we can do it very easily. We do not have to create a new pattern or a new block with the other measurement. So it is very benefit with this particular method, flat pattern making, that we can use the one basic block and we can do the grading of number of sizes using that particular block. Another advantage of this flat pattern making, it saves time and energy to the otherwise wasted in making pattern of different sizes. As right now we discussed that instead of making a number of blocks of different sizes, we can use one particular block to create the grading of different sizes. And lastly, it is very useful for the mass production of garment as it based on the standard measurement. Like so, for this industrial purpose, or when we have the garment production at a mass level or the mass production, we use this particular flat pattern making because they develop one basic sloper using the standard body measurement and they do the grading using that particular block only. Then this was about the flat pattern making. Then the third method of flat constructing or developing a pattern is the draping method. So draping is one of the very creative method for the pattern development. Draping is a three-dimensional method. So three-dimensional method because it is directly we use the dress form to create the pattern. So it is a three-dimensional method for preparing a pattern, and it is an artistic approach in which the person develops a pattern by fitting clothes to the curves of the dress form. Like we have the dress form or the mannequins or the dummy, and we use the fabric, just we have the fabric and we have the design, and we directly start putting the fabric on the dress form according to the design which we have. So in this method, one has the pleasure of seeing how the garment will look as the pattern develop. Like it is very creative, and we feel happy to see how our design is coming out. So the starting point when you put the fabric on the dress form according to the design or the sketch which you have, you start draping, and at the same time you can see how your design is coming out. So this is one of the very important method of creating the pattern. So you can directly put the fabric and drape the design and cut it, and then you can stitch, or you can develop the pattern from that also. Then this is the image how you can how the draping method is being applied on the dress form, and how you can see in the final image how the design is coming out. Then the key features of the draping method are like, first the draping begins with the muslin cloth. Muslin is a type of cotton fabric which we use for the pattern making and making the test fit garments in the design for the designing purpose. muslin is blocked, ironed, and the basic landmarks are marked before starting. Like before putting the fabric on the dress form, we use the muslin cloth, we take it, we blocked, like we do the scouring and all, we do the ironing, we have to do the basic landmarks on the of that particular fabric before putting on the dress form. Draping helps to see the fit and fall of the garment at the first stage itself. Like as you start putting the fabric on the dress form, you can see the fit and fall of the garment at the first stage itself. Draping allows for easy experimentation with neckline, collars, yoke and sleeve. Like suppose you have some different style of neckline in the sketch which you are using for constructing the garment or developing the pattern, and as you start draping the fabric on the dress form and you feel that this particular neckline is not coming out good, so at that particular stage you can change the style of the neckline or the sleeve or the collar which you are using. It is also easier to create unconventional designs with draping rather than flat pattern making. So there are some different unconventional type of designs are there which is not possible to develop using the flat pattern making. So at that point we use the draping method to develop that all unconventional designs. Many times in the fashion shows we see different unconventional designs and we feel that how this particular design pattern has been developed. So this method, by using the draping method, the designer has created that particular unconventional design. Then draping is a good technique to develop new idea, create new silhouettes. It is also help to see proportion, fit, balance and design features directly on the dress form. So as soon we are putting the fabric and according to the design, we can see the fit and the proportion of the design which is coming out, and we can manipulate or the change at that particular time. So these are some basic information about the different methods of pattern development that you can study in detail in your study material. Then the second unit of this particular block is tools for pattern making, which is very important to understand, because as we right now understand about the different methods of pattern making. So if you are not aware about different tools which we have to use in developing a pattern or stitching of the garment, how you will create the design. So it is very important to understand different tools for pattern making. So after going through this unit, you will be able to state and explain the fabric terms related to pattern cutting. You will be able to identify and describe tools used in pattern making. So this particular unit will make you aware about different tools which you have to use for pattern making, and different terminologies which is very important for you to understand, which is related to the pattern making and designing, so that you can easily work in the industry or the production houses. If you are not aware about the different technical terms and the terminologies and the tools, you will not be able to work properly in the like industries or the production departments. So it is very important to understand different terminologies which are used in the pattern making. It is very important to understand and be able to verse with the terminologies to understand it very properly. You must have studied some of these terms and you might be aware with it, and these terms are very useful for starting the course and further laying and cutting of the pattern on the fabric. Then different terminologies. What are terminologies? Common terminologies or the terms which you will come across every time when you are using or developing the pattern is the first is the pattern making. That right now we discussed about the pattern making. So pattern making, as we discussed, it is a system of making patterns, blocks using body measurements, and it can be done either by two-dimensional method, that is drafting, or by means of draping, which is a three-dimensional method, as right now we discussed. Second terminology is it is drafting or the flat pattern making that we discussed right now. Then it is draping. Draping is the three-dimensional method of pattern making, which we have discussed. Another term which you will come across is the muslin, which we have also used in the first unit when we were discussing. Muslin, it is a starched and untreated cotton fabric. It is a plain weave fabric available in different weights. It is a low cost and is used for making test fit and also for the draping. Test fit are commonly known as the toils and are important step in the garment construction. So muslin fabric is very important for you to understand and use, because at every time when you are using or when you are following the pattern making or making samples of any seams or the stitches, you should use the muslin fabric only. So as we discussed that muslin fabric is of different weights. So lightweight muslin we use for the soft drapes when we want the design is the demand of the design is that it is very flowy design, so we can use the lightweight muslin fabric. Medium weight muslin fabric used for draping and the test fit basic patterns. Heavyweight muslins, it can be used for testing tailored garments like suits and the jacket. So there are different weights that you can use. Apart from this, the different terms is selvage. Selvage means the edge or the narrow firmly woven strip on the side of the fabric. Grain, it is the direction of the yarns on the woven or the knitted fabric. So these are different terminologies that you in the detail you can study in your study material. Then different tools which you will be needing for the development of pattern, such as pencil, fabric marking pencils, fabric marking pens, tailored chalks, erasers, rulers, pattern masters, L scale, all these that you will be needing. So learners, this in the brief we discussed about the unit 1 and unit 2 of this particular block 1, that is introduction to pattern making of course 2, basics of pattern making and sewing. In next session we will discuss about the unit 3 and 4 of this particular block. If you have any query regarding these two units, you can mail us on cfde@ignou.ac.in. Hope this session was beneficial for you. Thank you.
We wear clothes on a daily basis. But have we ever wondered, where do our clothes come from? Who makes our clothing? And who are the people and the process responsible for the whole manufacturing of our clothing? If you want to know more about this, Indira Gandhi National Open University from the School of Continuing Education has launched a program which is Certificate in Apparel Merchandising. There are many benefits after doing this program. You can become a designer in various fields. It can be fashion designer, apparel designer, costume designer, or even a textile designer. One can also work as a fashion consultant. Research and development is another field which one can take up after doing this certificate course. Going into academics is another perk after doing this program. Getting into fashion houses or fashion studios as an intern is also a very good option post doing the certificate in apparel merchandising. The basic eligibility of the program is 10+2. The duration of the program is 6 months to 2 years. The program is also available for both the admission cycles, which is July and January. The exams are conducted twice a year, in June and December. So what are you waiting for? Join this program and get an enriching knowledge in the field of apparel merchandising. And to do so, you can log on to the official website of the university, www.ignou.ac.in.
Hello and welcome to another lecture on safety while working on heights. This is part of a 3-series lecture. We had covered a few of the topics in the previous lectures. In today's lecture, we will be covering the remaining portions of of safety in works at height. This is Unit 3 of the course MAAE 023, which is part of the postgraduate certificate in industrial safety. Before we start with the unit, we'll just look at the outline of the unit. The unit is safety in works at height. We discussed scaffolding in the previous lectures. Then we also discussed ladders. The next part in this unit is working on roofs. And the last part in this unit is use of related machinery and equipment. So in today's lecture, we'll be talking about working on roofs and use of related machinery and equipments. So you all know that working on roof is an integral part of any maintenance or construction activities related to a building. Now, it is a specialist activity. It cannot be taken in isolation or done by people who are not trained to do it because there are a lot of risk involved in it. So we look at certain factors that are to be kept in mind or certain things that have to be kept in mind while working on roofs. Now, let's look at what are the different types of accidents that occur while working on roof. Now, one of them is fall from the roof edges, which means that when somebody is walking on the surface of a terrace or a roof, there is a risk that they could fall off from the edge. The second would be that there are openings in the roof, and this could be in the form of ducts or in form of some unfinished work. So we know that bathroom ducts which open into the roof, or even the kitchen shafts which open into the roof, these, if they are not covered in a proper manner, there is a risk that people who work on the terrace, on the rooftop, might slip and fall into it. So the second type of accident that can happen while working on roof is the fall that happens through openings in roof. Now, there is another third aspect of type of accident that happens when when working on roof, and this is through fragile roof. We know that there are certain kinds of roof which could be made of glass, which could be made of polycarbonate, which could be even made of plastic sheets. And when one treads on it, there is a risk that the fragile roofs could break, and then that can cause casualties and accidents.
Now we look at the different types of roofs that we have in order to understand what are the mechanisms or the safety precautions that we need to take while working on it. So the first one is flat roof, which is, by the name itself, you know that a flat roof is one which is flat, which is there where there is no slope or anything of that sort. And there is a certain precautionary mechanism that we need to take on flat roofs. The next is sloping roof. Any roof that has got an angle, an inclination of more than 10 degrees is called a sloping roof. And we need to take precautions while working on sloping roofs also. The third kind of roof, which we discussed just now, is the fragile roof. Fragile roofs, again, we said it could be a skylight or some sort of mechanism which is used to let in sunlight and daylight into an area, and these are not usually made of the structural, it's not part of the structural component of the building. It could be an additional glass kind of roof, a transparent roof in order to allow daylight, and so these may not be structurally as stable as a normal roof. So now let's look at how to address these issues. So flat roofs are roofs which are, they're defined to be flat roofs which have a slope which is less than 10 degrees. The main mechanism that we use in flat roofs is to have guardrails and toe boards, and wherever there is a risk of falls of greater than 2 meters, we need to provide toe boards and guardrails. Now usually these flat roofs have a parapet around it, and if the parapets are strong enough, what we can do is we can attach these mechanisms like guardrails and toe boards to these parapets. Now, there are instances where the parapets are not there, or there are instances where the workers have to hinge themselves onto the parapet and then hang down in order to access some other level below the roof. And for this, what we use is we can use counter blocks, which are made of precast concrete, or any strong counterweights can be used in order to help balance the weight of the person hanging from the rooftop. And so this is an edge protection that we use. So now that we've got an idea of the protection mechanism in flat roofs, now we look at what happens, what are the mechanisms that we use for slope roofs. Now slope roofs, as we discussed earlier, any rooftop which has a slope of more than 10 degrees should have compulsory edge protection, and this is mandated by law. We are very familiar with sloping roofs. We have tile roofs or any roof which is common in our vernacular architecture. And one of the problems that these roofs, one of the reasons why we have these roofs is in order to allow the water to drain away, the rainwater to drain off, and also in countries where, or in regions where there are snowfall, then this is used to allow these rainwater or snow to run away. Now, one of the risks that happens is that because of the weathering, these roofs may give the impression of being very strong and sturdy, but that may not be the case. Also, when there are repairs or some other works, especially using tars, etc., the tar, liquid tar, and it gives an impression of being completely safe and sturdy, but when there is a point weight or point load applied to it, there is a chance of the roof giving away. So one of the things that we have to keep in mind while working on sloping roofs is that there has to be a proper mechanism in the first place to ensure that the roof is sturdy and stable. Let's now look at some of the mechanisms that we have, safety mechanisms that we have to protect these sloping roofs. In the figure given on the screen, you can see the edge protection for sloping roofs. In the first one, you can see a scaffolding-like structure set a little away from the wall of the structure. So what happens is, in case while working, a person or material rolls down the sloping roof, it can be stopped by the scaffolding that has been provided. The second figure on the right shows a clamping system where the scaffold is clamped to the wall, and again it is close to the roof edge, and this also prevents the falling of people or equipments from the surface. Now, one of the risks of sloping roof is that there could be moss which has accumulated over time, making the roof very slippery. So mechanisms like this while working on roofs help the people, the workers working on the roof, to be safe and secure. Now, there is another method or usually while working on sloping roof, there is a concept called roof ladder, which we can use. A roof ladder is an inclined ladder which is hinged on to the roof ridge, and the person can take support of the ladder, which is sturdier than the roof itself, in order to do any maintenance work, change of tiles, roof tiles, or fixing solar photovoltaic cells, etc. This can be done along with the using these roof ladder. Now, these roof ladders are not just restricted to sloping roofs. They can be used in fragile roofs also, which we will come to in the next few slides. Now, the next thing we are going to look is how to access fragile roofs safely. And to access fragile roof, first of all, we'll see what fragile roofs are all about. It's not just the skylights that we talked about, where we already talked about fragile roofs, skylights being a form of fragile roof, where daylight is allowed into the building through glass, polycarbonate, plastic roof sheets. It's very popular these days, especially in countries where sunlight availability is very low. And then there are roofs which are made of galvanized iron sheets. And this could be for, in a rural setting, maybe for a shed, an animal shed, etc. We use galvanized iron sheet. Now, there is something called unreinforced cement sheets, which means that it's not reinforced. We don't have an iron a material like in a concrete structure. We know it is reinforced with steel, but these cement sheets could be without any sort of reinforcement or any sort of steel structure to make it stronger. An asbestos sheet is an example of an unreinforced cement sheets. Now, the fourth kind of category of fragile roof is the unreinforced insulation slabs. You may be wondering what an insulation slab is. This is usually used in countries where there is extreme cold climates, and we need to give extra insulation onto the roof in order to prevent the heat gain in the building. And so these roofs, though they look like roofs, and they could be a layer below the original roof, the structural roof itself, but these are not sturdy and cannot be accessed or cannot be stood upon in order to do any work. That can cause casualties and accidents. So that's a figure on the screen. You can see the figure of a skylight, what I was talking to you about. There is a glass structure which allows daylight into the building. Whenever you work on these roofs like this, there is a risk of the roof falling off. And so we need to have additional protection mechanism while working on fragile roof. Now, how do we do that? On the screen, you can see two mechanisms. One is the roof walk and the other is a mobile valley frame. The roof walk is like a ladder where we do not take the load is evenly distributed by the structure itself, by the equipment itself. So people can stand on it and move about along the roof without actually standing on the roof, and this is far more safer than standing on the fragile roof. As you can see below, it's an asbestos sheet roof. Now, the second figure on the right, figure 5, is a mobile valley frame where more than one support mechanism is taken. The ridge of the adjacent roof has been used to move the mechanism. The person gets support from the mobile valley frame and moves about. Now, as we have finished looking at the work on sloping roof and fragile roofs and generally how to work in a more safer manner on roofs, we'll now look at the next aspect of moving things on construction sites, moving material and people on construction site. And this is the transporting and hoisting of materials on site. And there are many ways to do it. The methods of transportation on construction site, first of all, we use cranes. Cranes are very temporary structures on site which we use to transport material and mostly heavy materials from one place to another. The next is using hoists. Hoists are used for vertical transportation mostly. It can be used for both passengers as well as for people, as well as for material. So the third mechanism is using gin or pulley wheels. Gins and pulley wheels are familiar in a smaller setting, like in a rural. If you have been to some of the visited older parts of India in villages, you've seen how pulleys are used to draw water from the well. So these can be used in construction sites also, these pulleys and hoist wheels or gin wheels as they are called, in order to lift materials from one part to the other, maybe from ground level to a higher level, etc. The next way is very common. The way of transporting objects and materials from one part of the site to another is by manual handling. And you would be surprised to know manual handling can be very risky if not done properly. In fact, of all the accidents that happen on construction sites after fall from heights, the accidents or the injuries caused by manual handling is a maximum contributor to accidents, loss of work days, even deaths on construction sites. So there is a proper scientific way of manual handling of objects on site, which we will look into. But before that, first we will look into how cranes are used on sites and how to use them in a very safe manner. What are the safety precautions that we need to take while using cranes on site? Cranes are temporary structures used in construction sites to lift heavy loads or move heavy loads from one place to another. If you have been to any construction site, you have seen these tall structures which look like space frames, and these are actually operated by an operator, and it is used to transport materials from one part to another. There would be heavy materials on construction sites. There would be reinforcements, steel reinforcements on construction site. There would be big objects or equipments like DG set or chillers, which cannot be manually. It can be manually transported, but it would take a lot of time and effort, and it can be easily done with using a crane. So in these days, cranes are ubiquitous sight in all construction sites, and these have to be used in a very careful manner, and we'll see how it is done. First of all, we need to prevent overloading. Now, whenever cranes are brought to a site, there is a rating given to it. The cranes have a maximum load limit written on it by the manufacturer. Also, there would be different parts of the crane, like the arm of the crane. There are certain wheels and pulleys attached to the crane. These all have got graded. They're all graded in terms of how much load they can carry. And to be safe on the safe side, we need to also always ensure that the cranes are not loaded beyond the limit. So the first principal mechanism while using cranes on a site is that we need to prevent overloading. The second one is that there are alarms and hoot mechanisms inbuilt into the crane itself, and we need to make sure that these are working properly, and that these mechanisms are always followed. These are for the safety of the operators and the people around. So sometimes we have seen there are LED light alarms given in order to show the ambit of the crane, the boom of the crane that we say, and people have to be cleared from this area while the crane is in operation. So one of the safety considerations while using a crane is to make sure that the alarms and hoot mechanisms are working properly. The third mechanism is to inspect the ground on which the crane stands. The soil on which the crane stands is a very important function, has got a very important function on the stability of the crane. It has to be on a firm ground, and sometimes the ground can be made of very soft soil and can cause instability. And it's also important whenever a crane is used to maybe transport or dig or do an excavation of soil from one part to the other, sometimes the operator can misjudge the stability of the soil, and then the movement can be affected. For example, the operator might misjudge that the pile of soil that has to be collected is softer and may use only lesser strength or lesser time duration in order to transport that pile of soil from one place to another. And what happens is when they unexpectedly hit a firm ground or a stronger or a more denser soil, what happens is it can cause the toppling of the crane itself, because the crane can pivot over it and topple over. And so it has to be made sure, the considerations have to be there to make sure that the ground on which the crane sits is firm, and also the load that the crane takes. If it is a pile of soil, even the density and the nature of it has to be studied before attempting to move it from one place to another. So one of the important aspects before working a crane is to inspect the ground on which it sits, and also the ground on which, or the kind of object that it is going to transport. The next one is the inspection and maintenance. There are regular inspection and maintenance as stipulated by law, and there are stipulations by the manufacturers of crane itself. Now, it's not just important enough to follow these instructions. We also have to periodically check and make sure that the maintenance is well done for the cranes. Now, one of the first important aspects that we need to look in terms of maintenance and inspection is to check where the friction takes place. Wherever there is maximum friction, it could be the brakes, it could be the hoist, it could be the ropes which are used by the crane. These are areas which are susceptible to break and tear, wear and tear very easily. So wherever there is large friction, we have to make sure that this is maintained often and periodic checks are done. One of the thumb rules that we need to follow while operating a crane is that before beginning any work on a construction site, an inspector, a qualified inspector, has to be brought onto the construction site, and a thorough checking of the crane and the various parts have to be done before commencing the activity. The next is the ropes and slings, which we have to consider while ensuring maintenance of the crane, or rather the safety of the crane on construction site. Ropes and slings are used to carry the objects and the heavy objects and materials on site, and we need to make sure that these are well functioning, there is no wear and tear, and that these are of the adequate length and quality. So these are the 5 major aspects that we need to consider while using cranes, or rather before using cranes on any construction site. Now, let's look into the detail of what we were discussing just now. How do we prevent overloading of the cranes? First of all, we need to estimate the load correctly. Like we said, we need to know what we are lifting and how we are going to transport it. Then mark the crane and accessories at regular intervals with a loading capacity at each duration, at each radius. For example, there are cranes called derricking cranes. For them, they have a radial activity also. The arm has a radial movement. So the maximum capacity has to be marked on the arm itself. So the alarms and hoods are the second considerations that we talked about. It alerts the operator and assistants when safety load is exceeded. And then we also talked about keeping the ground firm, careful of the soft soil, and checking the periphery conditions. One important methodology that we can practice is to practice racing slowly, checking for any instability or overloading. Inspection and maintenance: follow governmental maintenance and inspection mandates. Get an inspection of the crane done before commencing work on a site. And then any part that undergoes friction, the sheaves of the crane, wire, ropes, hinges, bolts and brakes, these have to be given special consideration and special care. And the safety mechanisms like safety lights, sirens, limit switches are functional or not. This has to be checked. This is an example of the sheaves and rope of a crane. This is very crucial before using the crane for any lifting activity on the site. This is one part that has to be thoroughly checked before using the crane for any activity on the site. The crane safety lights, as you can see on the figure, these are square figures which indicates what is the boom of the crane, or which is the area that has been cleared, preventing people and objects to be within this particular region that is demarcated by the crane safety lights. Ensure the ropes and slings of the crane have safety limits marked on them. Have a cushion between the object and the sling, especially while carrying heavy objects using the crane. We need to make sure that there is a cushion so that there is no friction and subsequent wear and tear or collapse of the crane. Now, some of the best practices for safe crane lifts are shown in the figure. We need to provide barricades all around and ensure that the sling of the crane is at 45 to 60 degrees, and give clear signals between the operator. Someone has to be standing outside and guiding the operator as to what is the movement that has to be undertaken. And next we'll go into the construction hoist. These are used to transport materials vertically on a construction site. It has got a tower, a carriage or car and a motor. So we have a figure of the construction hoist. There is a vertical hoist, that is vertical tower, and there is a carriage or a car that moves up and down vertically, and this is used for both transporting of material and also people. At every level or the floor where the hoist is set or the construction hoist is kept, there is a stoppage where people and material can be offloaded onto each level, and then other objects and things can be stacked on back to the hoist, construction hoist, and then taken up and down. So that's a figure of construction hoist. And what are the mechanisms and the safety measures that we need to take into consideration for hoist towers? First of all, hoist towers are to be secured to buildings, and wherever there is, there has to be secured at intervals onto the building in order to get stability. The carriage, which is where the people and the objects are kept for moving up and down, there has to be a 2 meters enclosure around the carriage. There has to be a fall arrestor in order to prevent the carriage from falling down, or in case the control is lost and the carriage falls off, there has to be a fall arrestor which attaches the carriage to the building. And then the operation is in a way where the operator is at ground level and has got a view of the entire hoist when it goes up and down. Make sure that you're not carrying any materials like brick or sand, etc. If you're carrying a wheelbarrow, make sure that it is blocked in a way that it doesn't roll off the platform. The other safety measures is that whoever the personals and the workers who are handling the construction hoists are properly trained. Make sure that they have their personal safety mechanisms in case there is a fall or an accident. Make sure that they have a personal safety mechanism to prevent that fall, etc. So these are some of the preventive and safety measures while using construction hoists on a construction site. Now we'll move on to pulley wheels. Pulley wheels are used for transporting smaller objects onto site, and it's for hoisting objects, to raising objects from the ground level to a higher level. It's used for lighter loads mostly. They're also called as gin wheels. And some of the safety mechanisms that we use for pulley wheels is to always have a 2-point support for pole, hooks with safety latches, have a hoisting rope which is maintained very well and checked at every interval. Use a lid for the bucket if contains liquid, and do not overload. So in today's lecture, we have seen some of the mechanisms that we employ while working on a high level on a construction site. First, we looked at the use of construction safety mechanisms while working on fragile roofs or roofs in general. We saw how to work in a safe manner while working on a flat roof or a sloping roof or even a fragile roof. In the second part, we looked at the mechanisms that are used in construction sites to hoist and transport mostly vertically objects and people on construction site. We looked at how cranes had to be maintained and what are the safety mechanisms and safety measures that we have to take while using cranes on a construction site. We also saw how we use vertical hoists or construction hoists, which are used for transporting people and materials on vertical level in a construction site, and we saw what are the safety mechanisms that we need to practice while using these hoists. The last part, we saw about how to use pulley wheels on a construction site, where what are the mechanisms that we need to keep in place in order to make sure that these are done in a safe manner, and making sure what are the periodic mechanisms for maintenance and effective working of these pulley wheels on construction site. With this, we come to the end of the first part of this lecture, where we've had an overlook of having safety mechanisms for working on heights. And in the subsequent lectures, we'll be looking at personal mechanisms about how to lift in a proper manner, how to avoid injuries and personal accidents on the construction site. Please go through the units that have been provided. There are detailed descriptions of more than what I have discussed with you right now. I've just given the points that are related to the unit. and the more clarification can be obtained from going through the unit. So thank you for listening to me and have a good day.
Good morning.